All right, are you ready to put on your thinking caps again?
Yeah.
Good. Very good. All right. We are, in another few days, you're going to sound very good on these pieces, whichever ones we do. And so rest assured. All right. Right, and here it is after lunch. Continuing. In the words of this rule, the astral plane with its function and problem, it's the problem plane, is ably synthesized. Note the terms used in description. So let's go back and read what Rule 7 actually is. Well, come on now, where are you? Well, I'll tell you what okay, here it is. The dual forces on the plane whereon the vital power must be sought are seen. We're going to a plane which has dual forces, and a vital power must be sought on this plane. The two paths face the solar angel, who is not the full solar angel, but that much of the solar angel who is incarnated in us as the ego on the higher mental plane. A choice, the poles vibrate. A choice confronts the one who meditates. Okay. So those are the main ideas. We have the plane of the dual forces. It's inherent in the fourth ray. There's a bipolarity. We have the plane of the two paths, says the Tibetan. We have the plane whereon the vital power is sought. It's a power. How can we put it? It's a power that will make the thought form live. Okay? Power to make your thought form in process of creation live. That's what this vital power is. It's the plane of the vibrating poles. It's the plane whereon choice is made. DK says an interesting thing. He says, right now, humanity as a whole is in the scales. It's in the balances. He says humanity's choice is ruled by Libra right now, and it will be made on the basis of their desires, either low desires or high desires. However, the choice of disciples is not in Libra. Do you have a sense of what sign it's in and what will determine the nature of this choice? It's not in Libra.
Scorpio.
Scorpio. Right, Scorpio. And it's not made just with desire and emotions, it's made with the mind. So the disciples of the world are making a conscious choice with the mind. And that will determine the outcome. As a matter of fact, really what we have right now is a prolongation of the Atlantean War. Right now. It happened in the Second World War. It was the Atlantean War on a higher turn of the spiral, that's what we're told. And the same protagonists, the same leaders, were the heads of the two sides. This means that those leaders in the German army were the members of the opposing side in those days. And people like Churchill and FDR and who else? I don't think Stalin, but in other words, they were the leaders of the forces of light at that time on a lower turn of the spiral. I think that's an amazing thought. I wonder if we can close this.
This one.
Yes. I'm tired of looking at that beautiful tree. And I'm also seeing the effect it's having. If you wouldn't mind. Oh, yes. That's feeling a lot better already. Thank you. You won't be tempted now to go to sleep, will you? Certainly not. Okay. So, now notice how the Tibetan uses words. He tells you it's the plane whereon the vital power must be found. So now he says one of the most vital things, he throws the word in right away, okay? One of the most vital things that every aspirant has to do is to learn to understand the astral plane. Are we aspirants? This is an arcane school question. Are we aspirants? we are we not? We are aspirants to initiation, in a way. And Master DK's particular task is to train aspirants for initiation. This is his task. As a matter of fact, I may have shown this to you before, but I think it's worth looking at. It goes something like this: D, K, aspirants. There's only one of them. The ashram of Master KH. These are the masters involved in the externalization of the hierarchy. Energy from the 5 ashrams is flowing. These ashrams are the ones that are making the externalization possible. The ashram of the Master KH, particularly in regard to the work of education, a broad, wide-scale spiritual education, and also simply education lifting the masses up. The ashram, the ashram of Master DK, myself, this was obviously written after it was revealed who he was. You know, it was supposed to be kept a secret throughout the whole time. But Alice Bailey, unfortunately, left a couple of words down at the bottom of one of her documents that she sent out to everybody, and it said, DK the Tibetan. Well, the cat was out of the bag, so that was it, you know. Anyway, Master DK, myself, particularly in regard to aspirants for initiation. That's his job. At first, just the first and second initiation, and later, he seemed to admit or seemed to say that in fact he was also taking on the training of aspirants for the third initiation. Then Master R, reorganizing the reconstruction of Europe from the point of view of economics. So as you can see, there's a crisis in Master R's ashram right now. You can see that. The ashram of Master Moria, as he seeks to find, influence, and direct the activities of workers in the political field throughout the planet, and the ashram of Master Hilarion, as he supervises the discoveries and the application of such discoveries of the scientific movement in the world today. These 5 ashrams are the ones which are directing the externalization process. Do you feel affiliated? Do you feel related? Do you feel connected with one of these? Probably one of the first 2, wouldn't you say? In most cases. In most cases, not all. The second ray ashrams. The first 2 are second ray ashrams. Then comes a third ray, 7th ray ashram of Master R. Then Master M, first ray, and Master Hilarion, what ray? 5, ray 5. Okay. So, one of the most vital things which every aspirant has to do is to learn to understand the astral plane, to comprehend its nature, and to learn to stand free from it, and then to work on it. So, standing back from one's emotions, right? Not being swept by your feelings, by your emotions, and then to act. In this instruction, I seek to give some clear teaching on this plane. For the moment a man can see on the astral plane, he puts it in quotes, so it probably doesn't mean literally, what can I call it, clairvoyance in the sense of seeing the imagery of the astral plane, but it means to have a very clear sense of what's going on in the astral plane, and can achieve equilibrium, and can hold steady in the midst of vibrating forces. That moment he is ready for initiation. It's quite a statement. So, you know, when you really think about it, so many of us are misled by our astral bodies. We are just pulled off by our astral bodies, by our reactions, anger, you name it, just jealousy, fear, greed, hate, all those. Just the names of the Hydra, frankly. And we're pulled off, and we lose our equilibrium, and we cannot stand as a mentally focused being in the midst of all this stuff. So, you can judge yourself where you stand in the midst, whether you can stand in the midst of the vibrating astral forces. Okay. So anyway, I think he's talking about the second initiation here. He's talking about negative emotions, I think. Principally about negative emotions. Okay. About negative emotions. Destructive emotions, separative emotions. Okay. Okay, so what does he ask for? That moment he is ready for initiation. Now, is this part of it? No, this is from Raise and Initiation. And he's telling us about excesses that go in both directions with the astral body. We have to realize that all moods, all display of sorrow and of pain, or of happy excitement, are due to our identification with the objects of desire, with the form aspect, and with that which is material. So he's asking us not to be carried away by personality happiness as well as personality sadness. I think joy is a quality, though, that is allowed in the astral body. And an understanding of the emotional astral body and the place it plays in the student's development, it should be recognized as the shadow of the monad, and a connection should be traced between astral body, the shadow of the monad. What do you think? Does that make sense at all? Just take a look at the chart, at the map. If I can find it. Yeah, that's it, right there. Take a look at plane 2 and plane 6. Then it makes sense, doesn't it? The lower reflects the higher. Not really, I would say it's like this, that the Buddhic plane is the reflection of the monad, and the astral body is the shadow of the monad. 2, 4, and 6. It's a very Neptune kind of thing. It's the soft line 2, 4, and 6. Okay. Okay. How strong is this tea? What you have to do is as you drink this objectionable tea, you have to think coffee as you drink it. Boy, that was good. Yeah, green tea. Really good. Really, it was just great. What can I tell you? Wow.
I've tasted it, I'm not convinced.
I just think Starbucks, that's all. Something like that.
Yes.
Have you heard of Starbucks?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit like heaven. Okay. First, let us... How many here have ever gone into a Starbucks? A Starbucks... You've never gone into a Starbucks? Okay. And how many, having gone into a Starbucks, have never drunk coffee? You mean gone in and never drunk coffee? That's very good. Well, hats off. How many think these people must be crazy? Starbucks is a coffee chain that started maybe 20 years ago, or I don't know how long. It's probably the most popular coffee chain in the world. They have every kind of coffee there you can dream of. Matter of fact, the franchise for Starbucks has spread so far across the world that there's also one in heaven, on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. You don't believe me, do you? But really, I have it on good authority.
But having been vilified for years, caffeine, coffee, has great beneficial health.
Yes.
Health benefits.
Yes, I've been...
One of them is for the lung.
Yes.
It's very good. It's very good if you're slightly asthmatic. There are other...
Keep talking.
Other health benefits. There is not the evil beast that we would...
All right. That's what I'm glad to hear you say that, really.
It's one of the few things
that never relates to any kind of cancer disease.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I'm going to take notes on these things. Because at some point in my life I may reverse my irrevocable decision. We will see.
Well, you should try green tea at the Starbucks. That's quite good actually.
What is it?
The green tea.
Green tea at Starbucks. Okay. All right. I just thought a little deviation discussing these things would perk us up just a little bit. Absolutely. Martha's never been in a Starbucks.
Never. I've never heard about it.
Martha, where have you been?
Nowhere.
They have in the Copenhagen airport. I've seen them.
Absolutely.
It was on the right side of you when you came out.
Yes.
Yeah, just on your right
Yeah,
side.
I figured it'd be on my left. Anyway, the cup of a cup of coffee in the Copenhagen airport from Starbucks is obscenely expensive. So that's why I don't ever have any.
Everything is expensive in Denmark.
Yeah. But in the case, the sleeping prophet, he orders sometimes coffee for his
Who does that? Finn?
for his readings.
And a homeopathic remedy as well. So I mean, it's not all.
No. We have our justifications. Okay. Good.
Have another coffee.
Okay. First, let us gather together some of the terms which are used to describe this sphere of divine being. Remember, at one point he says the astral plane doesn't exist, and now he calls it a sphere of divine being. This is very interesting, isn't it? Okay? Describe this sphere of divine being wherewith a man has first to identify himself, penetrate to the center, pierce through its veiled illusion, and eventually stand poised, untouched, and uninfluenced, and free. This fantastic paragraph about how to deal with the astral plane and the astral body. I think this is very interesting, the sphere of divine being, because I want to write here that yet he says there is no astral plane. And I think what he means is that what man has put on the astral plane, in terms of all of his desire forms and so forth, are not real. They are not real at all. It's kind of an abuse of what this plane is meant to be. It's meant to reflect the love energy. That's what it's meant to do. Okay, so penetrate to the center. First, identify with your desires. I want this, I feel good, I feel bad, etc., etc. Pierce through the illusion and stand eventually untouched. Okay.
So are you saying that it was once pure and now we've polluted it?
We have humanity from early Atlantean days under the influence of growing mind, and because of the Black Lodge, has polluted the astral plane. Yes. And if we want to talk about pollution on the physical plane, it's like nothing compared to the pollution on the astral plane. We have a lot of trouble to try to keep our feelings and emotions pure compared with what all the stuff that's floating around. Yeah, okay. Matter of fact, you know how it goes. If you're the average aspirant or disciple, the astral body is going to be the hardest for you to overcome. And therefore the second initiation will be virtually the hardest. The fourth initiation has a difficult reputation, but by the time you're there, you really know what you're doing and why you have to do it. So you're not approaching emotionally at all for the fourth initiation. Okay. Yes?
Doesn't DK say somewhere that the astral plane is the only one that has no life of its own?
Uh-huh.
That way? I think
Well, that is an interesting. Maybe if you can find that one. It doesn't sound unreasonable. I'm not.
only plane.
I'm not. I'm not remembering that, but I know that the number 7 tends to become the number 6, and what I think happens with the astral plane, it eventually becomes an expression of pure love energy, reflecting the Buddhic plane. So it doesn't have the normal kind of function. This happens with the overcoming of desire. So if you can find that, I'd be very interested.
You'll try.
Yeah, okay.
So man has polluted
the astral plane.
Yes, yes, because it is a sphere of divine experience. It is a sphere of divine being. And he says that the lords of the dark face knew that man was developing a mentality. So they tried to lead that mentality astray by fanning his desire nature to an extraordinary end, so that it became way out of proportion. And man then began to desire all kinds of things following his desire nature. And he says the Atlantean civilization was the example of that rampant desire out of control. He told us that unimaginable heights of luxury were reached in Atlantis, of which the cities of gold are the legendary remains. So, when these conquistadors and all that, they went to America, Mexico, South America, looking for the cities of gold, they were basically following an old Atlantean legend. People just were so selfish at that time, run by their astral body. And, we were there, And maybe we have learned something since then. Maybe our desire nature, too, was out of control in those days. Okay. You know how it was in those days, the leaders built great statues of themselves and had people worship those statues. It was the height of ego in the lower sense. Anyway, we're emerging out of that now, slowly. So anyway, now here's the idea of the term astral and how it got the wrong connotation. It's a misnomer, says HPB was right when she used the term astral in connection with the etheric or vital planes of the physical plane. The real astral body is the etheric body. So we have that term applied to the wrong body. So when contact is made with the etheric world, the first impression given is always of a starry light, of brilliance, of scintillation. What does astral really mean? Star, light. This is not how the emotional plane is, says the Tibetan. The etheric body is like this. Gradually, however, the word became identified with kama, or desire, and so was used for the plane of emotional reaction. Now, why was this so? Why did the term astral come to mean the desire nature instead of the etheric nature? And somewhere an explanation is given. Any ideas? Wow. I'll save some for you.
Thank you.
It was simply this, that most people's etheric bodies were filled with kamic emotional energy. So, passing through our etheric nadis are the kinds of energies that we are most focused upon. Most people, being kamic in nature, desirous in nature, their etheric body was filled with this stuff. And so when it came to looking at ether and emotion, they became the same. The same. And so the term came to mean the emotions that were passing through the etheric body, or, because nobody could think in that clear a manner, just emotions. So it became associated with the emotional body.
So one's pure and one's tainted.
Yes, well, okay. In principle, yes. However, DK gives a very powerful first ray meditation to those who are brave enough to do it. It's in the Rays and the Initiations, chapter 10, and it's a initiation on how to clean up the etheric plane. And he basically telling us that has to be done first before we can clean up the astral plane. We have to work backwards. Now, why would this be? Just think, if we can push back all the chaotic forces that are now running all over the etheric plane and making the physical plane a mess, Maya, then we can have enough freedom and space on the physical plane at least to gather our forces so we can together attack the astral plane. But right now, people don't know where their next meal is coming from. They're in mortal danger. They can be killed any time. Anything can happen to them on the physical plane because of the chaos in the ethers. So we have to reduce the chaos in the ethers. And he gives us a meditation to do this. It's very powerful meditation.
Powerful way of serving, isn't it?
It is. I'm remembering Mary Bailey very much. This was one of her favorite meditations. And every Thursday we would do this meditation after work. And you couldn't just get in there to do it first. I was there. I had to wait a half a year before I could get in and do this meditation, because she considered it dangerous at first. That's what. Remember when I was talking about?
How does it go? How does it start?
Focus the force at the jewel's point and find the veil that it can touch. A path lies through the veils, etc. Walk on that path, wielding destruction and clearing out the refuse in the veils. The very first grade meditation. Focus. I'll show it to you. Force. Focus the force. Here it is in chapter 10, page 190 in the Master's Book of Rules. Focus the force of the jewel's point, find the veil can touch. Carry the force from point to point and then project. The force is going to be your ashramic force, the force of the jewel and the lotus. Look for the energy and form. This is an attack meditation. How often do you get meditations which are attack meditations from DK? You don't. Look for the energy and form behind the veil, attacked. A rent within the veil exists, find it and see. So, St. Paul, Moses, and the Christ tore the veil on behalf of humanity so the light could get through, and a lot of lesser servers made their own rips in the veils of Maya. The path lies through the veils, giving access to the several courts between the veils. Walk on that path, wielding destruction and clearing out the refuse. The court of the Moneychangers is the last. So this is all about what's going on in the temple, and it uses the old temple imagery of the seven veils and so forth. So, what did Jesus do? He threw the Moneychangers out of the court, didn't he? He just threw them out as he overturned their tables and threw them out. Meet the descending forces from the ashram and find the current which is yours.
Oh my God.
See? It's going to be one of the ray currents, which is yours. Then you're going to meet evil head on. Watch for the evil stream of force which seeks to mend the tears, the rents. Project upon that stream the energy of which you know through the jewel in the lotus, the jewel in the crown, and the jewel in the ajna. Project upon that stream the energy of which you know it led you from the ashram into the veils. Use it and drive the evil back onto the astral plane. Clear out the ethers first, and then you can worry about the astral plane later. But right now, the etheric chaos is first to be attacked. And then the last one, work with the sound that comes from the monad. Work with the sound. Know it as the source of power. Use first the voice, personality. Use then the Om, soul. And later use the sound, monad. All three together will suffice. page 190, in the Master's Book of Rules. Very, very powerful. And you can understand, this is a first-grade meditation. And it's not to be done unless we are willing to take the risk to do it, and they're doing it in group form. But you see what I mean? Glamour is one thing, it belongs to the astral plane, and Maya, all the confusion, what DK calls it, he calls Maya that unthinking emotional mess. Those are his words. That unthinking emotional mess that causes people to run here and there, doing without knowing what they're doing, purposeless doing, driven by their emotions. That is Maya. Covering up reality with activity. Glamour is covering up reality with desire and feeling. Illusion is covering up reality with thought forms. To speak it simply, what it is. Okay. All right. So anyway, the astral plane, the true astral plane is the etheric plane, but there's so much emotion in it that the emotional nature has come to be identified with the term astral. It is interesting to note this, for it is in itself an instance of the effect of the astral plane. He says the reason this happened is because the astral plane is as it is. It has an effect on the human brain, which in its uninformed condition reverses the reality and sees things in an upside down state. So our values are completely reversed. Everybody wants to keep living and nobody wants to die. Even though life is death and death is life. It's upside down. That's the old saying, only the good die young. Well, it sounds like, a cynical statement, but apparently not. And the old philosophers say the time to mourn is when birth happens. The time to rejoice is at death. Are they being, what are they doing? Are they being cynical? Are they being ironic? Or are they telling the philosophical truth? All right. So anyway, some of you know about the Wesak festival because you have seen pictures of it. Okay? You've seen pictures drawn in Leadbeater's book about here is the Buddha, here is the hierarchy like a 5-pointed star, here's all the faithful, and where are they? They're out on the plain of the Wesak Valley, and the Buddha is coming over the mountains from India. That's a good story. But apparently it's not true. Apparently Leadbeater reversed the whole image. That in fact the hierarchy is facing north. The Buddha comes through this area between mountains from the north, is it northwest or northeast, one of those. And the faithful are down in the valley. The Buddha is not coming from India. He's coming from exactly the opposite direction. This is the effect of the astral plane. Leadbeater was a very strong psychic. And somehow, even though he was, accomplished person, he reversed it.
Well, that's why they call it the mirror, don't they?
Mirror, exactly.
So you get a mirror image, and if you forget that, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, in this particular case, I think it was forgotten.
Yes.
Because the Buddha, we were in the Wesak Valley and we were looking in the direction that we were told to look. Wesak. Let me just see if I can. Alice Bailey has a story about Wesak, and you've seen it, I'm sure.
Yeah, she had an experience, didn't she?
Wesak, let's see, Wesak by man. Okay. Wesak and admittance to initiation. Wesak message. Wesak on the Easter festival. I can quickly look this up, but I think, well anyway, you just have to take my word for it. I put it in a place where I said, now I will never lose it again. And I'm sure it was a very good place somewhere. Okay, Wesak in many forms. And maybe I'll just take a quick look and just see if there's anything here. Oh, it doesn't. Well, it disturbs me because I definitely had that whole Wesak thing here, which showed the direction from which it came. Extracts on the Wesak CD text 1. Wesak meditations. Let me just try that one. Well, I guess you just have to take my word for it. I have it here, and I can find it, but I definitely had it recently, and I don't want to go on one of those interminable searches.
How did you find out that he'd got it wrong?
By comparing what the Tibetan said with what he said.
Oh, right.
And when I found that they were exactly reversed, I knew what had happened.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew exactly what had happened. And Wesak in many forms. I'm just quickly Wesak presentations. Wesak. Wait, is this it? Wesak, the legend of the Wesak. Group, okay. Chanting, rhythmic reading.
That looks to be the one, is it?
It comes near. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, well, somewhere it says, from the north. Their eye toward the sky in the direction of the narrow part of the valley, which is not out there where Leadbeater has it. It's just very, because I've been there, and between Mount Kailash and another mountain there is this narrow thing, and the Buddha arrives at a point exactly over the great rock, which is not in the middle of the valley. It's much towards the other end, and then all of this happens. So I wonder if there's any word here says north. I'm not sure. It is surrounded by high mountains on all sides except towards the northeast, where there is a narrow opening in the mountain ranges. That is exactly correct. And that is where the Buddha is said to come from, and not from India at all, because the northeast is Tibet. The reversal of the astral plane. See what I mean? And even though, as DK says, nobody could doubt the accomplishment of Leadbeater, he was an accomplished man, still a mistake was made. And he pointed to another mistake too. Leadbeater was kind of funny. He never wanted to include the sacral center when he was talking about anything. You know what I mean? So basically, DK said that Leadbeater thought the Kundalini was being aroused, when in fact it was the sacral center rising to the throat, not the base of the spine center rising up to the crown. So we do make technical mistakes, and then we read about them and we believe these mistakes, and only later, when we know for ourselves, do we straighten it out. See? The masters have said for a long time they may let a mistake go uncorrected. Just letting the student find out for themselves about it. I think there have been some mistakes floating around for 75 years. 65 years since the Tibetan was writing. And he's just letting it be. And when he comes out again, he will correct those mistakes. Okay.
Put some new ones in.
Put some new ones in here.
Yeah. Well, a lot of friends of mine disagree with the Tibetan. Okay. So I'm taking appointments for them to arrange for interviews where they can discuss the mistakes that he has made. And I'm looking forward to the response. Finn is among them. And others. They're just sure it's a typo. They're just sure it's a misprint. DK couldn't have meant that. Okay, maybe. Okay, so it reverses things. The appearance of the astral plane, when first definitely seen by the opened eye of the aspirant, is one of dense fog, confusion, changing forms, interpenetrating and intermingling colors. It is of such a kaleidoscopic appearance that the hopelessness of the enterprise seems overwhelming. It is not light or starry or clear. So, when you start to worship the astral body and the astral plane and all the rest of it, keep this description in mind of what it really looks like. Okay. It is apparently impenetrable disorder, for it is the meeting ground of forces. Because the forces in the aspirant's own body are equally in disorder, he blends with the surrounding chaos to such an extent that it is at first almost impossible for the onlooking soul to dissociate its own astral mechanism from the astral mechanism of humanity as a whole and from the astral mechanism of the world. Have you ever been in the situation where you're not feeling particularly emotional, but you go into a room where everybody is, and the next thing you know, you are emotional too? Has that ever happened to you? Or you're feeling fine, and someone else just, in a bad state, says something to you with that astral tone. Immediately your astral body picks it up, right? And you don't even know, is it them, is it you? You're feeling that way, they were feeling that way. It's a confusion, right? So this is what we have to stand back from. I don't know, are the Danes a very emotional people? Not like the Italians, no?
No.
Not like the Spanish? No. Not like the Russians.
Oh, they're even worse.
The Russians...
And the Irish.
The Irish have a reputation for the astral body.
Yes.
Ruled by Mars, they call them the Fighting Irish, right? And some of the Mediterranean countries have that. And I think the Arab group as a whole is very emotional.
Very emotional.
Very emotional. Given to hyperbole, exaggeration, all the rest. Whereas in Northern Europe, you have the reputation of being more stoic. Being able to just hold it. Which is not necessarily good for one's health, by the way. I wonder, sometimes about the rates of cancer among the stoic people compared with those who are letting their emotions out all over the place. I mean, it'd be interesting to do a study on that. Yeah. Because, in esoteric healing, it's first-ray suppression of the emotions, which is one of the ways of leading to cancer, it is said. So when you allow yourself to express more emotionally, it helps.
That's what he said in cancer patients.
Finn says that,
That's what he said.
DK says that, absolutely. They should be in here singing with us, which gets me to the point.
That's why
Recruiting the choir. Martha.
But Michael, even if you can feel how when you enter a room and there is a certain
Turbulence.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you take it in.
No, if you know how not to take it in.
Oh yes.
If you know how not. But he's saying that
put a ring of protection.
that people can hardly tell who they are anymore, what's their emotion. In other words, feeling is in the air, and pretty soon it becomes their feeling, and they don't even know how it happened. See? But if you are more sophisticated, more psychologically observant, more mentally polarized, you say, hey, wait, that's yours. That belongs to you. This doesn't belong to me. That's a discrimination, right? Right.
Isn't this like the closer it gets to the equator, the more the fight?
That's right. Absolutely. Because it's the solar plexus of the world. If you think about it, the head center is up on top, the base of the spine is at the South Pole, and right around the equator, we have that the middle, the astral area. Yeah. Of course, sometimes it gets so hot that it takes all the fight out of people. So, that's the enervation of hot climates. But in general, it's true. There's more of this reactivity. Of course, the Norsemen had a reputation for fighting too, didn't they?
Oh, the Danes.
The Danes, yeah. But the Danes are now so civilized. What happened? Or is that just under the surface? Or has Holger the Dane not risen again yet? Anyway, we all have the emotional problem, right? But some people have it more under control. So, just watch your moon and watch the aspects to your moon. It will tell you the degree to which you are letting it go or controlling it. I have Mars on my moon, I should be an emotional wreck, but I'm not. Not anymore. Okay. See, how I dealt with that? How I dealt with that in my life is I directed opera for 20 years of my life. I got it all out on the operatic stage, So I said, "Oh, that's enough of that. I think I'll think." Okay. When you're a stage director for opera, thinking is not done in the same way. It's kamamanasic.
I think that the Danes are more civilized because they, in all history, have been surrounded by the culture on all sides. And that apart from Sweden and Norway, Iceland, they're more separate, they have more easily to build up a rigid...
So they have had to...
Denmark are more civilized because they have a lot of historic connections to Northern Europe, England, and...
So connections help with civilization.
That was a good reason for it.
Yes, okay.
So
should we have a vote to see whether Denmark is the most civilized country in the world? I just thought I'd take an unbiased...
In the world, compared to the... I would like to ask you, you have traveled a lot in the 3 Scandinavian countries. How do you feel? Who is the coolest?
Coolest?
Which country is the coolest population? Because you're an outsider.
I'm an outsider, yeah.
Finland and Sweden will...
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think Sweden is cooler than Denmark.
Back holding,
I feel that. Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't really been to Norway, but they have a lot of... I have been kind of to Norway, but I don't know the Norwegians too much. They're a little mystical in some ways or something. I don't know. Denmark, I've heard that Denmark is called like the America of the Scandinavian countries. And, somehow for expression, more so. Although your queen said that you have a habit of reticence, some seventh ray thing. All the way through Scandinavia there is seventh ray, which holds back. I'm trying to think about Finland. Finland is not really a Scandinavian country. They have quite strong emotions in Finland, actually. If my wife is any example. But they know how to hold them. I'm in dangerous territory here. Don't record this. Okay.
Let's change the subject.
And Russia is even much more. It's a Leo country, after all. I think I see in Denmark a lot of naturalness somehow. I don't find it so rigid. I find it more flowing than some other places in Scandinavia. I'm sure it's more flowing than Iceland. And more so than Sweden. Sweden, I think. Yeah. The German astral body is probably something else. He says that you can't have a school in Germany, in that unhappy land. Apparently, inwardly and subjectively, it's still too much of a mess.
Oh yeah.
You can't have that. Yeah. Yes, I would think that up here in the north, with Denmark and Sweden, it's probably one of the first places the school could appear. I think. Because I think the emotions are a little bit, they're not out of control. No.
I remember Niels Brøndsted once said that there will be a new land from California and out into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, Pacific.
And that should be school.
Yeah, it could be, but that's going to be in the 7th root race. 7th. And the 6th root race is going to last 10 million years, so don't hold your breath.
Something to look forward to.
That will start in California, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, and there are references to the California Islands, which probably don't make the real estate developers in California feel very good. But there's a lot of things going to go on with Earth changes. So they refer to the California Islands now, yeah. And Pacifica, I guess maybe from the Rosicrucian Cosmoconception by Max Heindel. That was one of the ideas there, of the big Pacific continent that would be rising. And of course, it would be the continent of peace, Pacifica, right? The Pacific Ocean, right? Okay. So anyway, we have to learn how to dissociate our aura in the emotional sense. And it doesn't mean we can't be sensitive, but it means we have to know what's going on in me as opposed to what's going on around me. And that may be not as easy as we think at first. Okay. It is for this reason that the first qualifications for discipleship is discrimination. Where is discrimination found? On what subplane? Remember, we studied this once, not long ago. Discrimination is found on a particular subplane of what plane? What would you think? Listen what he says. For it is through the use of the mind as analyzer and separator that the astral body is brought under control.
It's on 5-4.
5-4.
Yeah.
5-4.
5-4.
5-4. So in fact,
The fourth.
it's on the discrimination is on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. Here it is. Right.
That's what I found.
Right here. Right here. The plane of discrimination. And actually there's a few, we have some references that have all the cities. You know what a city is? It's a psychic power, right? There it is. We have them all. Here's the mental plane. There it is. Discrimination is right in the middle. So when we are able to actually focus the mind in a discriminative manner, we can separate our emotional stuff from everybody else's. And what planets will help us do this? They are the two planets of discipleship, particularly. They're not the planets of the path of aspiration. They are the planets of discipleship. What are they? You know this. You know this. Just think. Discrimination. Telling one thing from another. Coolly. Two planets are involved as planets of discipleship, and they are the planets of discrimination. Well, in this case, I will show you. Jupiter, of course, is so inclusive. The problem with Jupiter sometimes is that it's over-inclusive, so it fails to be discriminating.
What about Venus?
Well, Venus is magnetic and attractive, and generally non-separative. You're looking for two separative planets. Mercury and Saturn. The two planets of discipleship. And these are the planets which, when powerfully operating, allow you to make distinctions between what's going on here and what's going on there. And we use that all the time in this class. We're using it all the time. In some ways, this is a very Mercury-Saturn class. We are being specific about what we're talking about, and we're trying to keep things clear. One thing is not another thing. It is, of course, fundamentally, everything is everything else. We know that. But on the level of practical life, this belongs here, this belongs here, this belongs there. Saturn and Mercury. In esoteric astrology, page 70, we have one of the references. Disciples upon the path of discipleship are strongly influenced by Mercury and Saturn, one bringing illumination and the other offering opportunity. What kind of opportunity does Saturn really offer? Is it the kind of thing, well, here, let me give you, here's $1 million, go do what you want? Is that the kind of opportunity we're talking about?
It's the opportunity to overcome, isn't it?
Yeah. It is the opportunity, finally, to successfully face your obstacles by not running away from them and taking the strategic measures you need to overcome these obstacles. So you are confronted with obstacles, and DK calls that opportunity. Most people want to run away from it and say, I wish something pleasant would happen to me. Okay, by the way, a bit later, at the fourth initiation, Mercury and Saturn again bring about great changes and unique revelation, but their effect is very different to the earlier experience. Mercury and Saturn. One of them, in a way, they both rule the mental plane, especially the lower mental plane, but later, Saturn rules all the lower worlds, and Mercury rules the Buddhic plane. Or here's another way of looking at it. Saturn rules the higher mind, where you make the map of all the different things, and Mercury then rules Buddhi. You know, when you're looking for planets, you can't just say, this goes only here, this goes only there. I can find 5, 6, 7 places on the cosmic physical plane where Saturn applies, and other planets too. So you have to be fluid in your thought. Okay. All right. I know that we're almost to the point, but I know you need a break, but pretty soon you won't even need coffee. You're going to be so enthusiastic about what we're discussing. Is this wishful thinking? If it is, it's not Saturn Mercury, it's Neptune Mercury. Wishful thinking. Okay. So it is for this reason that one of the first qualifications of discipleship is discrimination. You think you have it? And you use that? Are you careful thinker? Carefully separating this from that, carefully being objective about things within reason, right? Okay. The mind is analyzer and separator, that the astral body is brought under control. So when you go to the psychologist and you're having a lot of trouble, does that psychologist come to a point where he begins to say, well, let's examine this. Let's look at this closely. Let's analyze your situation.
I've never been to a psychologist.
Oh, you should try this. This is.
I
can recommend this. You've never been analyzed. Okay.
No.
You know, there was a period in the development of psychology when you just had to undergo psychoanalysis. You know, anybody who was anybody had to have it. Yeah. And if you wanted to be a psychologist, they made you do it, so you knew what it was all about, right? And then they'd end up just, after you spend tens of thousands of dollars, you would find out it was mother's fault, or something like that. Maybe father was to blame. Very profound conclusions.
Anyway, a bad childhood.
Yeah, it was, yes, a bad childhood.
Everybody had that.
Yeah, okay, secondly, the astral plane is the plane of illusion, of glamour, and this is it, a distorted presentation of reality. What is distortion? What does the word come from? Tort. Distort. Tort. Distort. Okay, I'm going to just try to find that. It is interesting. Distort. I want to look it up, which is kind of a fifth-rate thing to do. Distort. It has to do with twisting and turning. To twist out of proper or natural relation of parts. Misshape. Torture. Distort. Twisting, turning things out of their proper relation. So, have you ever been in front of those funny mirrors? Normal mirrors like this. Then you go in front of a curved mirror and you discover that your legs are this tall and the rest of you is that tall. That's called distortion. In other words, destroying the sense of proportion is what the astral plane does. It gets proportion all wrong. And people who are subject to glamour blow things out of proportion. They don't see with equanimity, they are not equilibrized, they're not stable, they exaggerate and they minimize. By the way, the fourth ray really helps if you want to exaggerate or minimize. Fourth ray, the ray of exaggeration. What does the fifth ray do with that beam of clear Venusian light? What does the fifth ray do? It ends distortions, right? And is connected, the fifth ray is connected with Venus, which is connected with what sign? Or signs? One of them is Libra, which is with relation to proportion. Libra is a sign of proportion, beauty and proportion. So it restores proportion. If you want to end glamour in your life, get rid of your exaggerations, get rid of your minimizations, and restore proportion to your consciousness. Okay. All right. So the astral plane is full of too big and too little. It's just wild exaggeration. What was one of the great exaggerations? It was said that Germany was the most dangerous country in World War II because it was the means by which glamour came through. Whereas Italy was illusion and Japan was Maya. Germany was very dangerous. What are some of the distortions that came through in Germany? Did Germany twist the truth? And of course, who was the expert at that? Was Joseph Goebbels, the great distorter, the great liar. Just think about the whole concept of the master race. Think about that. Taking the Aryan root race, the theosophical idea, and applying it to all Germans. Is that a distortion? See, it's a huge exaggeration without any clear analysis of the truth. And they made all of their theory fit that particular dream. Like Hitler, he was a master of distortion. He could just build up this huge bubble of expectation and lead everybody to it as if it was a great promise. And it had nothing to do with reality at all. It was a big lie. So that was Germany, the Second World War, the astral plane, and distortion. Okay. Actually, there's a story about him that, maybe I told you this, but in the Knights of the Holy Grail, that Hitler was a knight. He was a fallen knight. And he was in Wagner's opera. There was this Parsifal. Have you ever seen Parsifal or heard the opera Parsifal? There's a wicked sorcerer who holds the spear of destiny, and his name is Klingzor. And Klingzor, having fallen as a knight, is determined to mislead every other knight astray, to make sure all the other knights fall as well. And the author of this book identified Klingzor with Hitler as one who had started on the path of holiness but fell away from it. They make the most dangerous types when they do that, because then their shame is so great they want to take everyone else down with them, which is precisely what he did to Germany and so much of the world. Anyway, what we have here is a distortion of reality. The reason for this is that every individual in the world is busy working in astral matter. And the potency of human desire and of world desire produces that constant outpicturing and form building which leads to the most concrete effects of astral matter. The most concrete effects. Okay. Individual desire, national desire, racial desire, desire of humanity as a whole, plus the instinctual desire of all subhuman lives, causes a constant changing and shifting of the substance of that plane. This is what we have to overcome. There is a building of temporary forms some of rare beauty, some of no beauty, and of vitalizing by astral energy of its creator. By the astral, in other words, you want something, you build a form, I throw my energy into it, I want that. And now the form becomes alive with my desire to have that thing. Okay. And to these forms, that persistent and steadily growing scenario we call the Akashic record, which concerns the emotional history of the past. Add the activities of the discarnate lives which are passing through the astral plane, either out of or towards incarnation, and the potent desire, purified and intelligent, of all superhuman lives, because they have desire too, including those of the planetary hierarchy, and the sum total of forces on the astral plane is stupendous. All play around, and through every human being, and according to the caliber of his physical body and the condition of his centers will be his response. And the question is, can he stay stable in all of this incredible confusion of desire energy? Through this illusory panorama called phantasmagoria, the aspirant has to make his way, finding the clue or thread which will lead him out of the maze. So, is Taurus associated with astral energy? Remember the labor of Hercules in Taurus? What happens? What happens in that labor? What's the story? Who is involved? Have you heard of the maze and the Minotaur at the center of the maze? Mm-hmm. So Taurus rules the whole desire body. Mm-hmm. And this deadly beast is at the center of the astral maze. And what happens to Theseus the hero is that Ariadne, the soul, falls in love with him and lays down a thread, a golden thread in the maze. So when Theseus is in the maze, he finds the thread and he can find his way out because of Ariadne's thread. That's what this is all about, and it's one of the stories of Taurus. So holding fast to each tiny fragment of reality, this I know, this I'm sure of, this I can count on. Hold fast to every fragment of reality as it presents itself to us, learning to distinguish truth from glamour, the permanent from the impermanent, and certainty from the real. Now, on page 473 come the 15 counsels. Learn the meaning of illusion, and in its midst locate the golden thread of truth. You've heard that. You know, it's all learning the meaning of thought, find the golden thread, and that golden thread becomes a very interesting structure in our constitution. Eventually the golden thread is called the what? And all threads gather into one. Look up along the line and not along the many lines which in the space of eons you have built. It's called the Antakarana. The golden thread is called the Antakarana, and it leads us out of the maze of illusion. So this old commentary has an amazing thing, how to find our way out of illusion. Now, do you feel that you have pretty well disentangled yourself from astral confusions and phantasmagoria? Do you feel that in your life? If you're a true aspirant, a true disciple, you must feel that way to a certain extent, right? You're not just an emotional person, are you? You are a thinker, aren't you? So you have somehow gotten a hold of the thread. For us, where the thread might come from our soul, it might come from the words of Master DK's books. From whatever we take as the truth, the thread comes. So do you find yourself finding your way out of illusion by holding on to this thread. See, that has to go on all the time, because the maze is the whole 3 lower worlds. It's pretty tricky to find your way out of that maze, isn't it? Okay. And some people, they think they find it, and they can just rise out of the whole thing. But it's a false find. It just leads them into deeper illusion. I have the answer, follow me. And it just leads back into the maze. The real thread is very Venusian, very mental, very clear, has a lot to do with the Ajna center. Okay, so here's this wonderful thing from the old commentary, and then we'll take a break. Let the disciple seize hold of the tail of the serpent of wisdom. That's like the thread, right? Okay. And having with firmness grafted it, let him follow it into the deepest center of the hall of wisdom. Now comes the enemy. Let him not be betrayed into the trap set for him by the serpent of illusion. Oh, that looks like fun. Oh, how appealing. This is what's called swamp light. Will-o'-the-wisp. Irrlicht. There's a term in German, Irrlicht. It means the light that leads you into error. Okay, it appears above the swamp, and you feel you can follow it, and then you get stuck in the swamp. Okay. So, let him not be betrayed by the trap set for him by the serpent of illusion, but let him shut his eyes to the colorful tracery upon its back, and his ears to the melody of its voice. When Ulysses tried to get back home from Troy, what happened? Or what didn't happen? Everything happened to Ulysses, right? Odysseus, everything happened. But he ran into a group of women. What was their name?
Calypso.
Well, it's like that. It's like that. There's a special name to cover all of them, and they're called sirens. Sirens. They have wonderful singing.
But didn't he have one particular
There is a calypso involved somewhere.
Calypso, yeah.
And lately there's a calypso in that movie with Johnny Depp and all of the Pirates of the Caribbean series.
The myth says that she, I think, sort of held him in her thrall for 9 years or something.
She was the ocean or the water element.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you listen to the... Now, here's what Ulysses did. He was very smart. You know, he... Talk about a perfect third-rate, first-rate warrior. He really... He made all of his men on the ship stuff their ears with wax. Then he made them tie him to the mast. And he made them promise that no matter what he said, they would not untie him. Then he was the only one on the ship that had no clot in his ear, and he could hear the sirens sing. And all the men were deaf to the sirens, and they just kept the ship going, and he was screaming at them to change the course of the ship and let him down. But they obeyed his command and did not allow the ship to turn and crash on the rocks, because that's what would happen, always. The ship would crash on the rocks and everyone would be destroyed. Okay, so this is what's called the colorful tracery upon the back of the serpent of illusion and the melody of its voice, the siren's melody. Now, how can we talk about this in practical terms? You know, when you're a young person, a lot of things look really appealing. Maybe. And you wake up later and you say, whoa, how did I do that? It looks so good at the time, right? There's a lot of false paths that look just great. And you can go down those false paths and wake up sadder but wiser after it's all finished. So this is what you call, I want to use a word, a false allure. lure. Now, when you're a fisherman, you have this shiny thing that looks like a worm or a fish or whatever. It's called a lure. A lure. Every fisherman has to have a good lure. So they throw the thing out there, goes in the water, and inside this shiny, beautiful little whatever it is that all the fish love is a hook. Inside every lure is a hook. This is glamour. It lures you into this really appealing thing, and it got you. That's it. And now you can't get loose. Now you can't get loose.
Learns you to discriminate.
Yeah. Well, and you learn through Chiron what is the real thing and what's got the hook.
Is this Chiron?
Well, Chiron is the sadder but wiser planet. Know what I mean? The wounded healer. So how do you get those wounds anyway? You go after something that is bad for you, even though it looks good.
So a lure's not all bad, is it? Because then you can use that knowledge
Yes.
later on
You can.
to really help. Have you ever known
Yeah.
anybody who, you get types that have absolutely never done anything that would be particularly wrong, and they are so annoying and they are so unhelpful.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
removed from humanity.
And they'll do
You
something
have
wrong
got to
later.
listen to them.
Absolutely. Listen, it reminds me of Oscar Wilde, who was not the way you described. Oscar Wilde said, when we're thinking about lures and fishermen and all the rest, he says, I can resist everything except temptation. So basically, everybody falls for it. The old saying, I fell for that. That means I took the bait. And I didn't know, it looked great, and I took the bait, and I got stuck. Then when you finally, bloody, get yourself out of that hook, you know better the next time. They say that no one puts their hand on a hot stove twice. Okay. So this is going on, the sirens are singing, and it says, let him discern the jewel set in the forehead of the serpent whose tail he holds. Hang on to that serpent of wisdom, and by its radiance, which is beaming out on the path, traverse the miry, muddy halls of Maya. Two serpents, one task, one dangerous serpent looks great. The other serpent might not look very good, but it's the one to hang on to, and you can cross the path. Now all of us, except for one, are over 50. Some of us might even be over 60. Some of us might be over 70.
Somebody higher?
No one here is over 80. And therefore we know about these serpents. But when you're still a young person, when things look good, well, here's the classic thing. I married him for his looks. That is the serpent of illusion. Boy, he sure looked. I remember one of my relatives. I asked, why did you marry your husband? You just don't get along with him well at all these days. 20 years later. Oh, he was such a great dancer. I married him because he was a great dancer. Hey, what are we looking at here? What is real? What do we fall for? We all fall for this stuff. And you know how it is in the beginning, looks count for a lot. When you're first looking for someone, because you don't see the soul. So the outer form has its hook, its elemental hook. The soul doesn't have its hook. Soul is the real thing. If you are fortunate enough to see the soul. Of course, it is said that women are much more discriminating when it comes to that. The men are always going for the outer form, and the women go for the soul. That's the story. No glamour or illusion can long hold the man who has set himself the task of treading the razor-edged path. The path of discrimination, where you stay on the safe path between the pairs of opposites Not too much spirit or you'll burn up. Not too much matter or you will suffocate. Boy, we got into that one. The razor-edged path which leads through, and this is all pictorial Ray 4 language from Master Decay, which leads through the wilderness, through the thick-set forest, through the deep waters of sorrow and distress, through the valley of sacrifice, and over the mountains of vision to the gate of deliverance.
Wow.
This is such marvelous pictorial language. Everybody can relate to it, and you can find the things in your life which work out this way. He may travel sometimes in the dark, and the illusion of darkness is very real. Interesting. He may travel sometimes in a light so dazzling and bewildering that he can hardly see his way ahead, blinded like St. Paul, right? He may know what it is to falter on the path and to drop under the fatigue of service and of strife, because they go together. He may be temporarily sidetracked and wander down the bypaths of ambition, of self-interest, and of material enchantment, but the lapse will be but brief. Nothing in heaven or hell, on earth or elsewhere, can prevent the progress of the man who has awakened to the illusion, who has glimpsed the reality beyond the glamour of the astral plane, and who has heard, even if only once, the clarion call of his own soul. You know, wow. You know, Master Decay, obviously, he was a writer, a poet. You know, he translates all this old commentary stuff in almost Shakespearean language. It gives you such a rich sense of what we're going through. It's not just the dry stuff. He can give you the dry stuff when he wants to use the fifth ray so you can tell one thing from another. But when he wants to inspire you, he uses the pictorial language. Okay. So on that note, we will take our break.
We've all been delivered.
We will be delivered the gates of deliverance, where you will cast before the feet of him who waits to greet you at the gate all your aspiration in a well-sealed vase.
And the green tea is waiting for you and coffee for us.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that kindly, well-meant thought. Thank you. Okay, we have a break. I know you deserve it.
For how long?
Oh, not long enough. You know, 14 minutes, the usual. The usual. The usual. The usual.